Tonight on VHS Night, I present Radar on Trial, an inside look at the abuse and misuse of police radar. Now, I'm not advocating anything for or against police departments in this video. I'm simply presenting this as a historical artifact. This is from 1985, when the use of radar for speed enforcement was a relatively new technology. This video documents the history of radar and the many problems associated with its use. Judge Nesbitt himself will walk you through a radar trial, and experts will demonstrate many of the more common errors that occur. Drivers who have never been in a courtroom will find this video excellent preparation for their own defense of a radar-based speeding ticket. Needless to say, I cannot guarantee that this video will help you get out of a speeding ticket today, because it's 36 years old, and it's not exactly an unbiased report. It says this video was produced with funding from Radio Association Defending Airwave Rights Incorporated, otherwise known as Radar, its members Cincinnati Microwave. They made the Escort brand of radar detectors. Controlonics Incorporated, they made Whistler brand radar detectors, and Electrolert Incorporated, who made Fuzzbuster radar detectors. They present this and other information in the public's interest. It is their hope that through public awareness, abuses of police radar enforcement will be minimized. And again, this video is not meant to be a statement against the police and their use of radar. I'm sure it's much more accurate and better used today than it was back in the 1980s when this video was made. This is simply a historic artifact, the label that's coming undone, of Radar on Trial from 1985.
Radio Detection and Ranging, radar for short. Developed for the military during World War II, its ability to measure the distance and speed of enemy targets was crucial to the Allied victory. Today, radar continues to play many important roles in the conquest of outer space, in commercial and military aviation, and in traffic enforcement on the highways. All radar operates on the same scientific principles, but not all radar equipment is alike. Military or aviation radar may cost millions of dollars, while a typical police radar sells for under $1,000. There are also differences in the environment where the radar is used. Under ideal conditions, radar can be a reliable speed measuring device. But if it is operated improperly or in the wrong circumstances, injustices may result.
When traffic radar went on trial in Miami, Florida in 1979, it seemed as though the entire nation took notice. It wasn't the first time traffic radar had been challenged. Several earlier court cases had established that radar is based on a valid scientific principle, and it is. That the car that's out front and the closest to the radar is the one responsible for the radar reading, which isn't always true, and that no special training is necessary for an officer to make proper use of a radar. And that's absolutely false. In Florida versus Aguilera, the public got a chance to see that radar really isn't infallible. The equipment itself is subject to error, and some equipment makes more mistakes than others. You'd expect that when some units sell for up to $3,000, and others have been sold for less than $400. Not all of them perform the same. Let's take a closer look at police radar. Traffic radar has been in use for more than 30 years. Today, it's the major means of speed limit enforcement. An estimated 80,000 units are used to patrol America's highways, and almost all of them are made by these four companies: Custom Electronics, MPH Industries, Decatur Electronics, and CMI. There are about 24 models, and some are handheld units, like this one, combining an antenna with a computer and a target speed display.
Handheld units with a single speed display must be operated from a stationary position. Handheld units with two-speed reading displays can be used in the stationary or the moving mode.
The other type of radar is two-piece, with a separate antenna and a more complicated control box, with the computer and two speed reading displays. One shows the target speed and one shows the speed of the patrol car. Two-piece units can be used either in the stationary mode or from a patrol car in motion on the road. How does a speed radar work? The theory is really quite simple. If you bounce an electromagnetic beam of a given frequency off a moving target like this, part of that beam will be reflected back to its source, but at a different frequency. The difference will depend on the speed of the target with respect to the antenna. The radar's computer counts the two frequencies and converts the difference between them into miles per hour. Again, it displays the difference as the target speed reading. Interestingly, the same reading will show whether the target is moving toward the radar or away from it, because only the difference in frequencies is shown. In theory, it's all quite simple. In practice, not so easy, especially when several vehicles are within the radar beam simultaneously.
Contrary to widely held opinion, the vehicle that is out front and closest is not necessarily the one read by the radar. When several vehicles are present, the radar has no ability to distinguish between them. It does not necessarily choose the closest target, the largest target, or the fastest target. It may choose any one of these, depending on the circumstances and the radar.
A radar beam spreads from its source, like the beam of a flashlight. Close to the source, it's pretty narrow. At 500 feet, the beam of a typical police radar will cover 2 lanes of traffic. At 1,000 feet, all 4 lanes of a typical divided highway. At 5,000 feet, it covers a distance sufficient to take off a land or small plane.
To ensure that the suspect vehicle is the one responsible for a reading, it's necessary to track it through the radar's beam. The officer must wait until the speed reading changes. Only then can he be sure that he's identified the correct target vehicle. The tasks involved with moving radar are even more demanding. Now the radar must measure and convert 2 components of its signal: a high-frequency component, which measures the closing speed of the target, and a low-frequency component, which measures the patrol car's speed.
If either speed reading obtained by moving radar is wrong, the target speed also will be wrong.
The low beam of the radar may mistake a moving vehicle ahead for the ground and register this as lower patrol car speed. The difference will be added to the target speed readout. This is known as shadowing error. A strong reflector at the side of the road, such as a metal building or chain-link fence, may cause radar in the moving mode to add to or subtract from the speed of the target vehicle. This is known as cosine error. In some models of police radar, the computer may lag behind sudden acceleration or deceleration, as when the patrol car brakes to turn. The difference in speed may be added to the target. This is known as batching error. In the absence of a valid target, incorrect speed readings can be caused by the patrol car's air conditioner, police band, or CB radio. Even when a valid target is present, false speed readings may be obtained by panning the radar antenna across its control unit. External sources of interference capable of producing speed readings include power lines or power stations, even mercury or sodium vapor street lamps. In some locations, these false readings may exceed the posted speed limit. Military or civilian radar installations can produce high-speed readings in police radar. In order to issue a speeding ticket using moving radar, the officer must perform several critical tasks in a limited period of time. His first task, of course, is to continue operating his own vehicle in a safe and reasonable manner. After becoming aware of a possible violator, he must visually note its color, size, or other identifying characteristics, verify its speed on the radar, check the patrol car speed on the radar console against his speedometer to make sure that the speed reading is valid, while continuing to observe the suspect vehicle until it passes out of the radar and the speed reading changes. If he begins his observation at 1,500 feet, with both vehicles traveling 55 miles per hour, the operator has approximately 5½ seconds to perform all these tasks. Unless he performs them correctly and in order, using properly maintained equipment and a recently calibrated speedometer, no citation should be issued.
How serious are the problems with police radar? How reliable is the equipment being used? And how well trained are the officers who are using it? The answers to these questions are not very reassuring. In an age of seemingly endless federal regulations for highway safety, there are no regulations for radar. 2 attempts have been made to evaluate performance, one by the National Bureau of Standards, the other by the International Association of Chiefs of Police. Let's look at some of the results from the National Bureau of Standards tests.
All of the radar units but one displayed erroneous readings from patrol car shadowing. All but 2 of the units were subject to scanning error. Electrical interference affected 2 of the units, and interference from air conditioner and heater fans was found to affect 4 of the radars. Operating a CB radio in the same vehicle as the radar interfered with all but 2 of the units. 2 of the units were affected by transmission from a police radio in the same vehicle. All 2-piece units were affected by panning the beam through the display console.
3 of the 6 units tested by the National Bureau of Standards exceeded the recommended beam width, one by more than 50%. The IACP tested 24 models of radar, just about all of them. The results weren't much better.
In its tests using the tuning forks supplied with the equipment, the IACP found that 3 of the units did not function properly at low temperature, 1 did not function properly under the high temperature test conditions, another failed during the high humidity test, 1 additional unit showed erroneous readings during the vibration testing. 5 of the radar devices did not maintain frequency stability within the allowable tolerance. 1 failed at all conditions. 3 of the units that did not meet the frequency stability requirement also did not meet the input stability requirement. 3 additional units were unstable during the low temperature tests, while 4 failed at high temperatures. The same 3 plus 1 other device failed the high humidity test. 4 units did not maintain radiated output as required. The permissible beam width was exceeded by 1 K-band and 3 X-band devices. 7 radar units did not meet the performance requirement for low voltage supply. 3 units were not in compliance for Doppler audio. 5 radar devices were reported as not complying with the speed accuracy requirements.
The actual number of failures in this test might have been higher, but the IACP let the manufacturers themselves select the test units and then let them modify the units to achieve compliance. Even then, the results weren't as good as they should have been. It's been established that up to 25% of radar tickets are issued in error. My own guess is a bit lower, maybe 10 or 15%. Either figure is higher than it should be and higher than it needs to be. Better radar can be built. Law enforcement agencies should set purchasing requirements equal to or higher than the administration's proposed standards. Units built to these standards would cost more, but that's not important. Fairness to the motorist is what's important. Every state should adopt training standards as high or higher than those recommended by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. That means at least 24 hours in the classroom and another 16 hours in the field. The states also should adopt the national guidelines for enforcement practices. This would help ensure that expensive equipment and limited personnel are not wasted on speed traps merely to raise revenues. We have an interest in seeing justice done for the driving public. Most enforcement agencies wouldn't dream of giving an officer an undependable weapon or shoddy training in how to use it. Neither can they afford to do this with traffic radar.
Better equipment, training, enforcement policies. little or nothing is being done to attain them. Too often, it is not radar on trial, it is the innocent motorist.
The right to defend yourself before an unbiased judge or jury of your peers is basic to our system of justice. Whether you think you've been wrongly accused or feel the law is unjust, the place to seek redress is in the courtroom. It's a little scary, of course. All the power of the law is vested here. It'll be reassuring to have an attorney on your side, but not everybody can afford one. What are your chances if you defend yourself? That depends to some extent on the jurisdiction you're in, the judge, the jury if you're allowed to have one. In some areas, defendants are denied trial by jury in most traffic cases. More than anything, it depends on how well you prepare yourself. If you've done your homework and make a neat and respectful appearance, most judges are willing to listen to your case. Some will go out of their way to make allowances for your inexperience. Judges aren't ogres, but their time is valuable. Don't waste it by coming unprepared. You don't have to be a Clarence Darrow or even Perry Mason to present an effective defense. What you do need is to plan ahead, gather all the information you can, and be ready to present it in the proper order. A good defense begins the minute you see a patrol car turning to give pursuit, or see that old red light blinking in your rearview mirror. Of course, the first thing you check is your speedometer to see how fast you're really going. From then on, you're going to be making mental notes of traffic conditions, the weather, possible sources of electrical interference, and anything the officer says to you. It'll be especially valuable if you can remember any cars and trucks that were ahead of or behind you at the time the speed reading was made. The first chance you get, write all this information down and make a rough sketch of the conditions as you remember them. Don't just trust your memory. You're going to have to convince a judge or jury that your version of what happened is the correct one. To do that, you've got to be absolutely sure of your facts. These two men will be sure of theirs, or at least they'll say they are. Chances are both the prosecutor and his chief witness, the officer, have been through all this before. They probably have a pretty good idea of what they're going to say. They may even think they know what the defendant's going to say, but this defendant may surprise them. The day after receiving his citation, after deciding to defend himself, he went to the office of the court clerk. He asked for forms to subpoena certain records and asked for help in filling them out. The officer's arrest records, the officer's radar training certificate, the repair logs for the radar, the calibration log for the radar, the FCC certificate for the radar, the defendant's witnesses, if any. He also asked to have them delivered and paid a small fee for this service, usually just a few dollars for each subpoena. Now, this is no ordinary trial we're about to see. The case being tried never really happened, but it could have. It could even happen to you.
The next case is the State versus Avery Mann. Mr. Mann here?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Mann, you've been charged with speeding 62 miles an hour in a 50-mile-an-hour zone. You've entered a plea of not guilty. Case is set for trial. Mr. Prosecutor, are you ready for trial?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Mann, are you ready?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. We call Officer Tom Lockhart to the stand. Officer, will you walk up, stand in front of the judge, and get sworn in, please?
Raise your right hand. Officer, do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
You may be seated.
Officer, I'd ask you to speak up loud and clear so everyone in the court can hear you. Could you please tell the court your name and your official capacity, please?
My name is Tom Lockhart. I am a patrolman assigned to the Traffic Enforcement Division of the Erewhon County Sheriff's Office.
Okay, and how long you've been with Erewhon County?
2.5 years.
How long you've been assigned to traffic control?
For the past year.
Okay. And were you still employed on March 15th of this year?
Yes, I was.
Okay. On that date, did you have occasion to come into contact with a person known or becoming known to you as Avery Mann?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Do you see him here in the courtroom today?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Could you point him out and describe what he's wearing, please?
Mr. Mann is sitting right there wearing a beige shirt with a brown tie.
Your Honor, I'd ask the record to reflect that the officer has identified the defendant for the record.
So noted.
Thank you. Officer, could you describe what you were doing on March 15th that led up to your contact with Mr. Mann?
Yes, I was parked on the shoulder of the eastbound lane of Olson Road, observing the westbound traffic.
And what was it that you observed that focused your attention on the vehicle that you eventually found Mr. Mann to be operating?
I observed Mr. Mann's vehicle to be traveling at a higher rate of speed than the other vehicles.
Based on your experience and training, were you able to make an estimation of the speed that the car was traveling?
I estimated the defendant to be traveling 60 to 65 miles per hour.
Okay. Is there a posted speed limit in that area?
Yes, there is.
Okay. And what's posted?
50 miles per hour.
Okay. And that's actually posted on a sign?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Did you do anything to verify your visual observations and your estimation of the speed?
Yes, I did.
What did you do?
I checked it with my radar.
Okay. And what did your radar indicate the defendant's speed was?
The radar read 62 miles per hour.
Did you lock that into the visual display screen?
Manually, yes.
Okay. And what did you do after you locked in the 62-mile-an-hour reading?
I continued to observe the defendant, and then I proceeded to pull him over.
Okay. He made a stop for you?
Yes, he did.
Okay. And did you issue him a citation?
Yes, I did.
What did you issue him a citation for?
For speeding 62 miles per hour in a 50-mile-an-hour posted zone.
At the time that you stopped your police vehicle, did you check to see whether that radar reading or that speed reading was still locked into your unit?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Did you give Mr. Mann an opportunity to observe that reading?
Yes, I did.
Did he avail himself of that opportunity?
No, he did not.
Did all this occur in Erewhon County?
Yes, it did.
Okay. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examine.
The defendant is about to begin cross-examining the officer. Of course, he has a list of questions prepared well in advance.
Yes, Officer Lockhart, was there other traffic on the road at the time you issued me the citation?
Yes, there was.
Could you describe the traffic?
Not exactly. There were several vehicles on the road traveling both directions.
In each of the 4 lanes, there were vehicles.
I would say so, yes.
Some closer to you than I was, possibly, or
Possibly.
okay. I've prepared a little sketch here of the situation. Would you agree that that's the situation as it took place, the traffic, and specifically the truck that was next to me in the right-hand lane?
It's similar, however, I wouldn't put it exact. I don't recall if the truck was in front of you or behind you.
Okay. Your Honor, I'd like to show you. I was in the left-hand lane.
Your Honor, excuse me. At this time, I'm going to object. This is cross-examination, not the defendant's turn to testify.
That's correct. Objection sustained. Mr. Mann, you will have your opportunity for testifying, and at this time, all you can do is cross-examine this witness without giving your own testimony.
Okay, I understand. Officer Lockhart, are you aware that there are some objects or situations that can cause interference with police radar?
Yes, I am.
Are you aware that power lines can cause interference with police radar?
Yes.
Are you aware that commercial radar installations, such as is installed at the airport next to the area, can cause erroneous readings on police radar?
Yes, I am.
Are you aware that large buildings with metal sides can cause reflections in the radar signal that can also cause erroneous readings?
Yes.
And are you aware that even a chain link fence has been proven to occasionally show erroneous radar
Yes.
readings? And you still maintain that my vehicle was the one that produced the reading on your unit?
Yes.
Okay. What sort of training have you had in the use of police radar?
I've had 40 hours of training, 24 hours in the classroom, and 16 hours actually manual control with the radar device.
How long have you been using radar?
For the past year.
Did you bring with you the records that I asked in my subpoena?
Yes, I did. I have them right here.
Could I see them?
Yes, you may.
Excuse me, Mr. Mann, can I take a look at those too?
Yes.
Thank you.
The defendant is laying a foundation to introduce the material he subpoenaed.
Thank you.
Thanks. I don't see the repair record for the radar unit.
It's not there.
Is that because the unit has never been repaired or because such records are not kept?
I don't know.
Okay. Thank you. Officer Lockhart, are you familiar with the term beam width and what that means on a police radar unit?
Yes, I am.
What was the brand of the unit that you were using at the time, the citation?
It was a Pulsemaster KLV.
You know the beam width of that unit specifically?
Yes, it's 22 degrees.
There were 4 lanes of traffic. It's a divided highway. How many lanes of that traffic would that unit be covering at one time?
At
No, I'm going to object at this point. This is calling for a technical answer on the part of the officer, and I believe the case law is clear that the officer is not required to have technical knowledge of the operation of the radar.
If he knows, he can answer. If he doesn't know, he'll just say he doesn't know. The objection's overruled.
At approximately 500 feet, it would cover 4 or more lanes.
Okay, so all of the traffic there
Yes.
was in the beam width of the radar.
Yes, it was.
Are you aware that model of radar unit can clock vehicles as far as 3,000 feet or more away?
Approximately 3,000 feet or 3/4 of a mile.
Oh, 3/4 of a mile. And would you agree that the number of vehicles then within range, including 2 lanes eastbound and 2 lanes westbound, within, as you've said, a 3/4 of a mile range, was probably 20, 30,
I don't
50
know.
vehicles?
I don't know exactly.
More than 5?
I would say more than 5.
Does the radar tell you which unit it's reading?
No, it doesn't.
The only information the radar gives you, in fact, is just a speed reading.
Correct.
And it doesn't tell you whether the vehicle is coming towards you or away from you?
No, it does not.
Could you explain audio Doppler and how that's used in police radar?
Yes, the audio Doppler is a device on the radar itself. It's a tone where the greater the speed a vehicle is traveling, the higher the pitch of the tone.
Okay. Do you use that function on the radar?
I'd say about 80% of the time I do.
It's probably kind of annoying, that tone all the time.
Yes.
Were you using the audio Doppler at the time that you witnessed this incident?
Yes, I did.
And what did that further lead you to believe that my vehicle was the one producing the reading?
Yes, as I observed your vehicle traveling faster than the other vehicles, the audio Doppler, the tone of the pitch increased, and as your vehicle left the beam area, it decreased again.
But you've said before that the range of the unit is up to 3/4 of a mile, over 3,000 feet. Isn't it also possible that another vehicle was leaving range, perhaps going the other direction at the same time, much further away than my car?
Yes, that's possible, but based on my experience and the observations of your vehicle traveling, I have reason to believe it was your vehicle.
Officer Lockhart, are you aware that your radar unit is equipped with what's called an auto-locking feature?
Yes, I am.
Do you use that feature?
Never.
Well, given the fact that there were numerous vehicles within the range of your radar, which a number we apparently can't agree on, and the number of situations around that we mentioned, the aircraft radar, the building, any one of which could have caused a false reading, isn't it possible that my vehicle was not the cause of the 62 mile per hour reading?
It's possible. However, I don't believe that occurred.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Any redirect?
Yes, sir.
The prosecutor has decided to go to redirect. Maybe he feels the defendant scored some good points. After he's finished with redirect, the defendant can recross-examine if he wishes.
Officer Lockhart, Mr. Mann was questioning you about different vehicles that were also within the beam width. I want to ask you, what was it that you used to base your decision that the 62 mile an hour reading was caused by the Mazda RX-7 that you found Mr. Mann to be driving?
Number one, based on my experience. Number two, the audio Doppler, and of course the radar itself.
Officer Lockhart, Mr. Mann questioned you about certain items that caused or may cause interference or spurious readings in the radar, such as power lines, radar antennas, metal buildings, chain link fences. In your opinion, did those items affect the reading of 62 miles an hour that you got on your unit on March 15th at 3:05 in the afternoon? Did they affect it?
No, I don't.
Okay, and how were you able to determine that those items were not affecting your radar unit?
I determined that by, I had been parked at that location for approximately 2 hours and experienced no difficulty with the radar at all.
Okay, were you watching the radar to see whether you had random or spurious readings on it?
Yes, I was.
Okay, and did you notice any during those 2 hours?
None whatsoever.
Okay. At any time, did you check the calibration of your radar?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and how did you do that?
I checked both the internal calibration and also the external calibration with a tuning fork.
Okay, and when did you check the calibration?
Before and after the citation was issued to the defendant.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Do you have any recross examination?
I do have one question.
Okay, Mr. Mann.
Officer Lockhart, you just said that during the 2 hours you were sitting in this, parked in this position, you observed no spurious readings on your police radar.
That's correct.
One of these potential interferences is a commercial radar installation at the airport in the vicinity. Do you have a schedule for the times of operation of the various equipment in that installation?
No, I do not.
So is it possible that perhaps for the majority of your 2-hour duty there, something was turned off, and then when my vehicle happened to come within range, it could have coincided with a radar transmission from the airport?
It is possible.
That's all, Your Honor.
All right, this time the state rests.
All right. Mr. Mann, you now have the opportunity to testify on your own behalf or call witnesses on your behalf.
The defendant can choose to testify in his own defense or not. It's strictly his choice. Remember, the burden of proof is on the state. If you choose not to testify, you cannot be examined by the prosecution or required to give evidence against yourself.
I don't wish to call witnesses or testify. I'd like the opportunity to make a summary statement when...
All right. In other words, you rest.
Yes.
You may step down.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Mann, you may make whatever statement you wish.
In his summation, the defendant includes all the points he brought out during cross-examination, plus any new points favorable to his case. He should get in what's important, but try not to take too long about it.
Given the facts as they've been presented today, the amount of other traffic in the area going in both directions in all 4 lanes, which Officer Lockhart admitted that all 4 lanes were within the capability of his radar of reading a speed. There were a significant number of vehicles larger than my Mazda. Also, given the potential interference from the various units as I outlined, I feel that the state has not conclusively shown that the speed reading displayed on Officer Lockhart's radar was attributable to my car.
Do you have anything, Ms. Prosecutor?
Just briefly, Your Honor, I believe that the evidence was sufficient to show to the court that based on Officer Lockhart's training and experience, he knew how to operate that radar unit, he knew the errors that that radar unit might be subject to, and he guarded against those. And I believe through his testimony and through the evidence presented that we have shown that the 62-mile-an-hour reading that was displayed on the screen of his radar unit was attributable to Mr. Mann's car and not to any other cause.
Do you have any response, Mr. Mann?
No, Your Honor.
All right, the court will consider the case and announce its verdict in a future time. Court is in recess.
Now that the defendant and the prosecutor have done their jobs, it's time for the judge to do his. In the absence of a jury, he has complete discretion. He'll weigh the evidence that's been presented, take the facts into consideration, maybe even let himself be influenced by his impressions of the defendant. What you've seen here is not a course on how to be an attorney. If you can afford to retain professional counsel, you'd be well advised to do so. But you have the right and the privilege of defending yourself. If you feel you've been unjustly accused or unjustly singled out under the existing speed laws, there's something you can do about it. You can exercise your right to a fair hearing in a court of law. Good luck.